Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Cover to Cover. You're here with Mo,
Andrea,
and Morgan.
So today we want to talk about a visiting writer series, the Man Booker Prize shortlist, and we have an amazing author interview lined up with Brian Cuban today. So stay tuned for that at the end of the show. But first, just in case you guys missed it, Kurt Vonnegut has some new publications trending, one of which is available for us to read for free right now.
Now, ladies, it has been 10 years since the world lost Kurt Vonnegut, but his friend Dan Wakefield, along with Vonnegut scholar Jerome Klikowitz, recently uncovered 5 short stories never seen before.
they're working on a compilation of 97 of Vonnegut's short stories, slated to come out on September 26th, called Complete Stories. All 5 works will be included, but for now you can view The Drone King online for free. Let us know in the comments if you read this or what your favorite Kurt Vonnegut story is.
So I'm totally this person that says I have one opinion about something, and then 5 minutes later when the situation changes, I'm like, no, I feel differently. So Posthumous Publishing,
Yes.
I have had a
Let's
different
talk about
opinion about every time we mention it. But in this situation, I'm so excited because whether or not Kurt was into this, we're getting all these new stories by him.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you.
Right?
So, I mean, there are so many authors that were discovered posthumously, you know. I mean, we wouldn't have Emily Dickinson, and there are so many people who the world wasn't really ready for them. So to have these works come out later has really impacted the world. So, I mean, I'm totally on board for posthumous publishing in this case.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes.
Right now.
Kind of always not right now. Yes,
What's
right now.
absolutely crazy is that just this week I was thinking about Slaughterhouse 5.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, for some reason I thought about it. I was like, I should go back and read that.
It's so good. And in case you guys haven't read Slaughterhouse 5, it's a really interesting read too because Kurt Vonnegut was in World War II and he was in Dresden when all the Dresden bombings happened. He was a prisoner of war and he only survived the intense bombing because he was kept in a prison made out of a slaughterhouse and he was in a meat cooler with dead animals, and now he was alive, and then he wrote this creepy, comical, drab look at war, which he wasn't a big fan of after his experience, and then we got Slaughterhouse 5, his most well-known work, right?
That's
Yes.
crazy. So
I
know we talked about like author podcasts in our dreams, and my dream would be like Fitzgerald, you know, from the grave. But now I think it's going to be Vonnegut and Hemingway because I feel like they'd have some really good stories to tell if they just shared life stories.
Some of those episodes would be hard to listen to,
Yeah.
but yeah, they would have some truth for us for sure.
Yeah.
So do we know what these stories are about, or?
So I didn't read too intensely about it, but I am going to be reading The Drone King this weekend, so I'm excited. But, you know, he writes really darkly, like he's kind of satirical, but very dark and blunt, so I'm assuming they're along those lines.
I dig it. I
Yeah,
dig it.
check that out.
So if you need to read something dark this weekend,
This is
put
for
it
you.
put it on your TBR list.
Well, and as you guys know, getting a new piece of Kurt Vonnegut is epic for some literary fans because we're always striving for those further connections, and Lenore Ryan University, which is in North Carolina, is offering new ways to do this. They have this really awesome author series that gets students reading and it gets them access to acclaimed authors.
Every year, the school hosts the Visiting Writers Series, which is free and open to the public. This year's series kicked off with Colson Whitehead discussing his book, The Underground Railroad. This is a required reading for freshmen this year, and the forum was packed at this event. So check out their website to see upcoming authors, and make sure if you're in the area to definitely check this out.
Right? I know we've talked about going to author events and author signings before, which is always a fun and cool thing to do, like with your friends or on a date night, or go by yourself, girl, it doesn't matter. And one of my favorite stories that I wanted to tell you guys about, when I was living in San Antonio, one of the local schools, it might have been Trinity College or one of those other ones, was hosting an author event with Aaron Ralston, who wrote Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which got made into a movie, 127 Hours, starring James Franco, about the guy who cut his arm off. And so I was a big fan of the book because I really liked outdoor stuff, and I read it a ton of times. My book was dilapidated. I mean, it was like falling apart, and I gave it to him to sign, and he said to me that of all the pristine books he had signed that day, that my book was his favorite because he could tell that I actually loved it. And so now we're basically friends, and that's my story.
Wow, you have some serious celebrity encounters.
I know. Aaron Ralston, if you're watching, thank you.
There's a picture of you on her computer
Yeah,
as
no
well.
big deal. And my wall.
So that's awesome. I know at my university we had a lot of special guests. I was a journalism major, so we had like journalists coming in from like the Washington Post and the New York Times, and it was really special to be able to connect with people in that field that you admire so heavily and just see them like right in front of you at your school, like kind of in your place. You know, it means a lot.
Yeah. We had that as well at the places I went to school, but mostly related to, well, I only knew about the seminars related to my degree, which would not be as cool as this one that Lenore Ryan is hosting, which, by the way, I used to live very, very close to Lenore Ryan. Wow. Yeah, I know lots of people who went there. So if you're watching, Brian, if you're watching, let us know if you ever went, because I'd love to hear about it. But that school does put on great community events.
Yeah, and it's open to the public, so definitely check out the colleges in your area and see what kind of events they're putting together, because it's just a great opportunity to meet really awesome authors.
You never know who will be there.
Right. Yeah. Colson Whitehead, he's a big deal.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Well, if you're looking for some books to add to your TBR list, the Man Booker Prize shortlist is out now for 2017.
That's right. Lincoln in the Bardo by American author George Saunders is favored to win this prize this year.
This book covers America in the early stages of the Civil War and the sad passing of Abraham Lincoln's son, Willie. Willie's story does not end with his death. We follow him on his path into purgatory, or the Bardo, as a monumental struggle erupts over his soul.
So the winner's going to be announced on October 17th, so we'll have to stay tuned until that comes out. But in the meantime, this list gives us so much reading to ponder, right? I was just checking it out. There's about 20 books on the short list, 20 books. And these books are all going to live on to be classics, because the Man Booker Prize is a really prestigious, intense prize. So you know if the books made that short list, they're going to be good reads.
We can trust it.
Yeah, I don't know. My TBR grit list is growing and growing and growing. And like Texas Book Festival's coming out, and they just announced their lineup, and now I'm like trying to find my favorite authors and like read so many things so I can meet them.
Yeah. So I know that the Man Booker Prize has been around since 1969, and over the years, a lot of the people who win this prize go on to win the Nobel Prize for Literature. So it also gives you a lot of authors that you need to pay attention to, right? So I had never heard of this Lincoln in the Bardo or George Saunders. It's kind of my first time to hear about him, and I know he's written some other things, but for me, it's brand new information. So it kind of gives you just this like watch list of people to pay attention to, which is really interesting.
Do you know how people get on the list?
Lots of money. No, just kidding.
That's how it always works, right?
There is like a panel of people that kind of narrow it down, and so they're like probably sipping tea somewhere at like the Geneva Convention, perusing books and selecting their favorites, I imagine. So that's a pretty cool job, right?
Yeah, just add some like whiskey in there. That's how I imagine like those settings.
Yeah.
Like, I think this book will work.
Yeah, lots of cigars.
Cigar bar, So sign us up. We'll be there. We'll give our recommendations to add to the list, and you can feed us and give us things to drink. That's fine.
Yeah. And you know where you can find these books and other great books?
Where?
On GoRead.com. If you guys want to talk a little bit about GoRead.com, we're really excited to kind of bring you some information on it.
Yeah. We haven't talked about it a whole lot, except that you see where to buy our flash sales. It sends you to GoRead.com. So GoRead.com is a great community of readers and authors. It's a way for you to build a virtual library, for you to connect with authors, for you to connect with readers, and talk about your love for books. And you can also find all the books you love on there for free.
Definitely. So GoRead.com, as you've probably seen, is affiliated with Reader's Legacy. It's a part of Reader's Legacy, and it's so cool, y'all. You guys can create a reader profile and share what you're reading with your friends. So you can create your library, you can create your wish list, and like let people know what they should be buying you for Christmas. And then also, if you're an author, there's also a feature that allows you to create an author page as well, which can be connected to your reader page.
Cool.
So on your author page, it's great. I mean, you have a wall for people to write on. People can fan you. People can keep up with you. You can let people know what appearances you have going on. You can, put videos out there and photos for your fans.
Or we can stalk you on there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we'll stalk you.
And your author page will be connected to your books, so people can buy your books directly from your author page, and you can sell whatever you want on there. So if you have a Christmas album coming out and you want people to know about that, you can sell on your author page. So, I mean, it's a really crazy, awesome website.
Yeah. You haven't even mentioned the best part.
Tell us.
The Litcoins.
Oh, of course. So great.
So, as you do things on the site, you earn these things called lit coins, literature coins. They're kind of like points, and you can use them to get free books.
Yeah, which is so cool. And I know I've been saving my lit coins up, so every time I do anything, if you share an article, if you write something, if you favorite something, if you buy something, you get to build all these up. So it's just a great way to do that.
It's pretty lit.
And it's it is really cool for authors because it does give you that kind of storefront, so you can have kind of a business segment. But I really enjoy the articles, right? So there's authors out there writing articles pertinent to either what their book topics are about or what they're interested in life. And you can go in and just read that stuff and share it with your friends. You can share it to Facebook. You can just like interact with a bunch of different social media sites.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really cool site. And when you were talking about lit coins and all that stuff, and we're talking about wish lists, I mean, it's just built this really cool community of readers and authors to come together. But I mean, readers are connected with other readers in really special ways. So some people will have their wish list, and it'll kind of be like, some people are doing like pay it forwards. And so they'll buy someone a book off of their wish list, and then that person does a pay it forward, and it's a chain that keeps going. And I've loved
really
seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so our show, of course, is brought to you by GoRead, and so because of GoRead, we're able to be here to talk to you guys about all kinds of books and trending news. And our show also lives on GoRead, so it's not just on Facebook. You can find it on a couple different websites. It's on YouTube. It's on GoRead. And we're always updating cool information on there and sharing our stuff. We actually write really cool articles, kind of about some of the stuff.
We write cool articles, actually.
They're awesome. It's always about stuff that we talk about on the show, so you never know. We might have an article coming up about the Man Booker Prize, because there's lots to talk about there.
So, I mean, on the show we're having like small discussions about things, but our articles can have a little bit more information for you guys, so you guys will definitely have to check those out and create your reader pages.
Yes.
Also, our author for today, Brian Cuban, has a page on our GoRead site, and we'll have that link in the comments for you guys to check out his page, fan him, and buy his books, because he's got some really great books that we will be talking about.
And just send him some love.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And we also have a GoRead author page, so when you're on there, search Go space Read and find our author page where you can find more information, more articles that we write, and all of that good stuff. I think that's all we're going to say about that. It's fun.
Yeah. So we have a little intro for you guys, and then we will be getting to our author interview. So if you guys have questions for Brian Cuban, we're going to be talking about his book, The Addicted Lawyer. So if you have questions about recovery, he is a spokesperson and an author talking about recovery. So let us know if you have questions. Put those in the comments, and we'll get to that interview in just a moment.
All right.
Talk about the insanity of addiction. June 2006. The NBA team, the Dallas Mavericks, is going to the championship series for the very first time. My brother owns the team, so I'm a big fan. I'm going to get some pretty good seats to that game. You may think I sold them on eBay for some astronomical amount. I didn't do that either, because that would be disrespectful to my brother and the team. I took those 2 tickets and traded them to my drug dealer for $1,000 in cocaine. That wasn't disrespectful. But selling them on eBay would be disrespectful. The mind of an addict. And I'm looking at it, what am I going to do with all this? I have to hide it. I go to Home Depot. I buy all these electrical outlets and a drill. I come back home. I go to every closet of my house and I drill a fake electrical outlet. And I cut up all the cocaine and I put it behind all these electrical outlets in all these areas of my home. Like the DEA and the drug dogs never thought of that one, right? I go back to each fake electrical outlet in my house, take the drill, bzz, 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 each one. I put it all back in my Scarface pile, put it in a giant gallon baggie, Ziploc, go up to my bathroom, drop to my knees, as I had done so many times, praying for someone or something to take away my pain and my addiction. And I flushed it all down the toilet. The insanity of addiction. Repeat that same cycle for the second game of the championship series, where I had my 2 tickets. Same thing. Bzz, 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 and all the electrical outlets. Same Scarface pile. A new baggie, flushed it down the toilet. They say when Dallas flushes, it goes to Houston, so someone in Houston got really high that night.
Hi guys, thank you so much for joining. We have today Brian Cuban. So he's going to tell us a little bit about The Addicted Lawyer. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me here. I always love getting down to Austin.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your book.
The Addicted Lawyer is about my struggles as a practicing lawyer and as a law student dealing with alcohol and addiction and cocaine addiction. It's also the stories of other lawyers and other law students who have also dealt with addiction issues ranging from alcohol to heroin and opiates, and how they have recovered and redefined their lives.
Awesome. So tell me, I mean, you were a spokesperson. You go to various law schools, to various seminars. Tell me, what does this book mean for lawyers, young lawyers, lawyers in the professional field, law students?
Anecdotally, what I hear from them is it lets them know that they are not alone, that there is hope, that they can make it even if they're suffering from a mental health issue. And I get the same from lawyers, because as lawyers, as law students and lawyers, we're taught starting in law school that we have to hide these things, that vulnerability is weakness. And the message I try to get across with The Addicted Lawyer is that it is okay to be vulnerable and allow yourself to be helped, and that is not something that lawyers tend to do. We are taught to take advantage of vulnerability in the courtroom and our opponents. It's an adversarial system.
Definitely. I'm going to pull a quote from your book speaking on that, because I thought it was really powerful, and I'll just give you guys a little snippet to The Addicted Lawyer. So you say in here, I sometimes suspect that one reason some law students and attorneys seem to have trouble confronting problematic substance use and depression is because recovery requires sharing vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities, lawyers are not supposed to be vulnerable. We are type A hard chargers, impervious to stress and emotional pain, and we reserve our sympathy for our clients. We are trained to conceal any weakness in our positions and to take advantage of weakness in our adversaries.
That's right. I mean, and that's the culture, and it's a systematic issue that's in a culture that's instilled in us from the moment we walk through the law school door. And one of the things I try to do is break that down, and whether it's in the law school, whether it's at a law firm, whether it's at a state bar conference, or whether it's just a lawyer or a law student that emails me privately and say, no, you're allowed to be human. We bring our baggage. Lawyers are people too. Law students are people too. We bring our baggage to the door, to the law school, to the courtroom, to the office like anyone else. I've had law students and lawyers tell me for the first time, I'm the first person they've told about sexual abuse, about physical abuse, about other mental health issues, because they can't allow themselves to be vulnerable. They don't reach out for anyone to help on these issues. That doesn't mean that all lawyers and law students go through this, but however the stress of law school, the stress of being at a law, being in the law practice affects you, we have to find ways to deal with it.
Definitely. So you talk a lot about pressure in law school and how a lot of law students are going toward medication to help them survive the long hours of studying and countless hours without sleep. Tell me a little bit about that and people's addictions that start evolving from ADD medication and so on.
Well, one of the things I hear about all the time now is Adderall. Adderall addiction, Adderall misuse. And that wasn't a thing when I was in law school. I don't even know that Adderall existed in that form, because I'm an old man. This was 30-some years ago. But I hear a lot about students using it in ways that it is not meant to be used. But from a more traditional standpoint, in terms of, say, drinking, there is a culture of drinking that goes on in law school where law students bond using alcohol, law students network using alcohol, law students tell themselves that the way to deal with stress is by going out drinking, and that's what all students do, so why not do that? And that can certainly trip you into a problem drinking issue. Addicted law students become addicted lawyers if they don't find ways to deal with it. When I was going to law school, we had beer kegs right in the law student lounge. That's not going on today, but the main way of law students gathering is through happy hours and things, and it's changing to some degree, but I'm hoping The Addicted Lawyer will push that change forward.
Okay, and I think a really interesting point that you also make in your book is you're talking about, whether lawyers are susceptible when they're in law school to these, addictions, or if it's, going into it, if it's their personality going into it. Tell me about that.
Well, there was a study, I want to say it was 10 years ago or so that found that students are generally mentally healthier than most going in, and they come out a lot less mentally healthy coming out. So, you know, we have to look at the reasons why that happens, and again, it gets to what tools do we have and what tools is the school providing for law students to stay on the beam, stay healthy. Are we providing, you know, outlets such as, I know a lot of law students now, they bring in therapy dogs, some law schools, yoga, meditation, a lot of different wellness things. So we have to look at ways to empower law students to stay mentally healthy without turning to substances, drinking, Adderall, to make it through.
Definitely. And I want to encourage you guys, if you guys have any questions for Brian Cuban, we are opening a Q&A session for you guys, so comment below. So, Brian, tell me, do you think we have sufficient recovery programs? Like, what do you think about the 12-step program and some of these programs that are offered? I mean, I know a lot of them have religion-based behind them. What do you think about that?
Well, I got sober in 12-step. So I got sober. I've been in long-term recovery since April 2007 from drugs and alcohol.
Tell me, what does long-term recovery mean for viewers?
It means that I have been in recovery for, I'd say, how do we define it? Maybe a period more than a year, long-term recovery. So, and if that's not the way other people define it, I'm sorry. But I am in long-term recovery, so there are other ways to recover besides 12-step. A lot of people don't like 12-step. A lot of people do because, you know, there are people who believe it is too religiously founded, even though, you know, they claim to be just spiritual. But there is also what we call smart recovery that is not religious. If religion is a big part of your recovery, there's celebration recovery, which is Christian-based 12-step. There's holistic recovery. There's residential treatment that is 12-step based. There's residential treatment that is not 12-step based. So we have all these options besides 12-step that we didn't have when I was going through this. In my day, you were either in 12-step, and the biggest 12-step for people who don't know what we're talking about is Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the biggest 12-step, but there are other 12-steps. You were either in 12-step, or you were in a hospital, or you weren't in recovery. So today is a lot different.
Interesting. So tell me, what do you think? There is definitely a stigma with addiction. So what do you think when people say addiction is a moral failing?
I got asked one time what the biggest disappointment in my recovery advocacy was, and it is without a doubt all the people who believe addiction is a choice and a moral failing. People get lost in the nuance between the choice we make when the first time I do a line of cocaine. That's a choice, right? That is absolutely a choice. And the process of addiction, either psychological or biological, that takes over after that. When I did that first line of cocaine in a bathroom in a hotel in Dallas, Texas in 1987, I instantly became addicted. Not physically dependent, but psychologically, to that feeling of looking in the mirror and seeing a Brian that I, for the first time, loved, and seeing a Brian for the first time that was loved by everyone else. These were issues that dated back to my childhood. So that the addiction, the psychological process that took over was not a choice. I did not do that line saying, you know, I'm going to have 3 failed marriages, I'm going to go to jail, I've been to jail, I'm going to lose my law practice, and that's all great, right? No one chooses that. So people get lost in that distinction. Yes, the first time I took a drink, the first time I did the line of coke, the first time I did this, that was a choice. The process of addiction that followed was not a choice. So there is no moral failing in that. You can judge the morality of the first choice however you want, fine. Even though that choice may be influenced by a lot of psychological factors that may make you think it's not a choice. It is. And you can judge that morality however you want. There's nothing anyone can do about that. But addiction in itself is not a choice. The process that took over in my mind, in my body, was not a choice.
So you mentioned your childhood. Do you think there's a link between environmental factors and causation of addiction?
Yes, obviously correlation and causation are two different things. I talk about my childhood. I talk about the difficult relationship with my mother. There was a lot of fat shaming in my household. My mother had a very mentally abusive relationship with her mother. And I tell people, look, that is environment, that is correlation, that is not cause. My relationship with my mother did not cause these things. I do not blame my mother. Okay, that is correlation. The home environment correlates. We do not know what causes addiction. We do not know what causes eating disorders. So there is definitely a blah, blah, blah. It's contagious. The blah, blahs are contagious.
Sorry, I gave that to you.
The blah, blahs are contagious.
Take it back.
So we have to distinguish between causation and correlation. Yes, there are many things that correlate with addiction. There are many things that correlate with eating disorders, but that is not cause. We don't know what causes addiction.
So we've talked a lot about recovery from addiction, mainly in drugs and alcohol, but tell me about some of the other things in your book. This isn't just for addicts, correct?
No, it's, this book is for anyone looking to better understand addiction and recovery and how stress can play into that, how personality types can play into that. I analyzed my own personality with the Myers-Briggs and talked about that, how that plays into it with this book. I think this book is for a much broader base than just lawyers and law students. And there are some great stories in this book. It's not just my story. Yeah, if you want to read about me trading Dallas Mavericks championship tickets in 2006 to my cocaine dealer, there's some good stories in there. But there are also stories from other law students and other lawyers who have been addicted to heroin and other things, who have found their way into long-term recovery and redefine their lives. So there's a lot of hope and redemption in The Addicted Lawyer as well. I think that is for a mass audience.
And you talk about other things like binging, and there's so many other things that you're discussing in this book. I mean, I think it's a great book, and it opens a lot of doors, especially for lawyers to be able to talk about some of those vulnerabilities. But other addictions and other mental health disorders, I mean, you speak at so many different events. Tell me about some of the events that you speak at.
I speak at a lot of colleges about eating disorders because there aren't that many guys out there talking about eating disorder recovery. In recovery from bulimia since 2007. I was bulimic for over 2 decades, dating back to my freshman year in college. And back then, this was 1979, and back then, forget it. There wasn't even a lot of awareness for women with eating disorders, for females, for a male to talk about it. Bulimia had only been a clinical diagnosis since 1976, and I was going through it in 1979 and 80 when it started, so I didn't understand what it was. I just knew that it felt shameful, but it was something that gave me peace for a few moments, and then you have to have that peace again and again and again, and that's bulimia. And so I talk a lot to colleges about that because, again, there aren't that many lawyers. I talk to bar associations, I talk to law firms about the legal aspects, and I talk at a lot of events just about mental health stigma, mental health recovery. I've also been addicted to steroids. I self-harmed. It's something that isn't talked about in The Addicted Lawyer. So I've been through a lot of different things as I've searched for ways to instinctively fix myself without really taking advantage of the accepted ways of therapy, of treatment that we have today. And so I went through all those things, and I talk a lot about that. And I want to give people the benefit of knowing that recovery is possible, you are not alone, and that's my message. And vulnerability is okay. Talk to your inner child. I do it all the time.
I think this is a great book. Thank you so much for this interview. And we can find more on your blog, on your website, correct?
Yes, www.briancuban.com. You can find both my book there, and I do a lot of writing on recovery, whether it be eating disorders, addiction, from a number of different perspectives.
There's also a schedule of all the places that he will be speaking.
Yes.
And so you can catch him at one of those events. He also has an author page on our GoRead.com website, so we'll have that linked to you as well, and you can buy his books from there as well. So we will also be flash sailing The Addicted Lawyer today. So for all of you guys who want a copy of this, you can grab it for just 99 cents at the conclusion of this episode. We'll have a link for you. And we also snagged one of these t-shirts for you.
All right, go.
So it talks about authors and how they're just smarter.
We are. We make ourselves smarter by writing and figuring ourselves out.
Yes, definitely. So we have these really soft t-shirts. It's soft, right, Mark?
Yes, it is. Brian.
Brian, I'm so
You're not the first one to do that, Brian. But hey, I got a great testimonial from my brother, Mark Cuban, right there.
So you will
He was nice enough to do that.
have to grab a copy of Brian Cuban's book. And if you guys want to like and share this post for your chance to get one of these super soft t-shirts, we have the author ones and the reader ones. And as you know, September is National Recovery Month. And so thank you so much for joining us and for your important message.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you guys so much for watching. And we will be back on Friday. And so until then, keep reading, writing, and being awesome.